Professor Clinton Richard Dawkins, DSc, FRSL is an English ethologist, evolutionary biologist, and writer. He is an Emeritus Fellow of New College, Oxford, and was the University of Oxford's Professor for Public Understanding of Science from 1995 until 2008. Dawkins came to prominence with his 1976 book The Selfish Gene, which popularized the gene-centered view of evolution and introduced the term mem. In 1982, he introduced into evolutionary biology the influential concept that the phenotypic effects of a gene are not necessarily limited to an organism's body, but can stretch far into the environment, including the bodies of other organisms. This concept is presented in his book The Extended Phenotype. Dawkins is an atheist, a vice president of the British Humanist Association, and a supporter of the Brights movement. He is well known for his criticism of creationism and intelligent design. In his 1986 book The Blind Watchmaker, he argues against the watchmaker analogy, an argument for the existence of a supernatural creator based upon the complexity of living organisms. Instead, he describes evolutionary processes as analogous to a blind watchmaker. He has since written several popular science books, and makes regular television and radio appearances, predominantly discussing these topics. In his 2006 book The God Delusion, Dawkins contends that a supernatural creator almost certainly does not exist and that religious faith is a delusion, a fixed false belief. As of January 2010, the English language version had sold more than 2 million copies and had been translated into 31 languages. Background: Kenya. Dawkins was born in Nairobi, Kenya. He is the son of Jean Mary Vivian and Clinton John Dawkins, who was an agricultural civil servant in the British colonial service in Nyasaland. Dawkins has a younger sister. His father was called up into the King's African Rifles during World War II. He returned to England in 1949, when Dawkins was 8. His father had inherited a country estate, over Norton Park in Oxfordshire, which he turned into a commercial farm. Both his parents were interested in natural sciences. They answered Dawkins's questions in scientific terms. Dawkins describes his childhood as a normal Anglican upbringing. He was a Christian until halfway through his teenage years, at which point he concluded that the theory of evolution was a better explanation for life's complexity, and ceased believing in a god. Dawkins states, "The main residual reason why I was religious was from being so impressed with the complexity of life and feeling that it had to have a designer, and I think it was when I realized that Darwinism was a far superior explanation that pulled the rug out from under the argument of design. And that left me with nothing." Education: Dawkins attended Andal School in Northamptonshire, an English public school with a distinct Church of England flavour, from 1954 to 1959, where he was in Laundymer House. He studied zoology at Balliol College, Oxford, graduating in 1962. While there, he was tutored by Nobel Prize-winning ethologist Nicolaas Tinbergen. He continued as a research student under Tinbergen's supervision, receiving his MA and EPHIL degrees by 1966, and remained a research assistant for another year. Tinbergen was a pioneer in the study of animal behavior, particularly in the areas of instinct, learning and choice. Dawkins's research in this period concerned models of animal decision-making. Teaching: From 1967 to 1969, he was an assistant professor of zoology at the University of California, Berkeley. During this period, the students and faculty at UC Berkeley were largely opposed to the ongoing Vietnam War, and Dawkins became heavily involved in the anti-war demonstrations and activities. He returned to the University of Oxford in 1970, taking a position as a lecturer. In 1990, he became a reader in zoology. In 1995, he was appointed Simoniae Professor for the Public Understanding of Science at Oxford, a position that had been endowed by Charles Simoniae with the express intention that the holder be expected to make important contributions to the public understanding of some scientific field, and that its first holder should be Richard Dawkins. Since 1970, he has been a Fellow of New College, Oxford. He has delivered a number of inaugural and other lectures, including the Henry Sidgwick Memorial Lecture, the first Erasmus Darwin Memorial Lecture, the Michael Faraday Lecture, the T.H. Huxley Memorial Lecture, the Irving Memorial Lecture, the Sheldon Doyle Lecture, the Tinbergen Lecture and the Tanner Lectures. In 1991, he gave the Royal Institution Christmas lectures for children on growing up in the universe. He has also served as editor of a number of journals, and has acted as editorial advisor to the Encarta Encyclopedia and the Encyclopedia of Evolution. He is a senior editor of the Council for Secular Humanism's Free Inquiry magazine, for which he also writes a column. He has been a member of the editorial board of Skeptic magazine since its foundation. He has sat on judging panels for awards as diverse as the Royal Society's Faraday Award and the British Academy Television Awards, and has been president of the Biological Sciences section of the British Association for the Advancement of Science. In 2004, Balliol College, Oxford instituted the Dawkins Prize, awarded for outstanding research into the ecology and behaviour of animals whose welfare and survival may be endangered by human activities. In September 2008, he retired from his professorship, announcing plans to write a book aimed at youngsters in which he will warn them against believing in anti-scientific fairy tales. Personal life: Dawkins has been married 3 times, and has 1 daughter. On August 19, 1967, Dawkins married fellow ethologist Marion Stamp in Annisdown, County Waterford, Ireland. They divorced in 1984. Later that same year, on June 1, he married Eve Barham in Oxford. They had a daughter, Juliet Emma Dawkins. Dawkins and Barham also divorced. In 1992, he married actress Lalla Ward in Kensington and Chelsea, London. Dawkins met her through their mutual friend Douglas Adams, who had worked with her on the BBC's Doctor Who. Work: Evolutionary Biology. In his scientific works, Dawkins is best known for his popularization of the gene as the principal unit of selection in evolution. This view is most clearly set out in his books, The Selfish Gene, in which he notes that all life evolves by the differential survival of replicating entities. The Extended Phenotype, in which he describes natural selection as the process whereby replicators outpropagate each other. Dawkins has consistently been skeptical about non-adaptive processes in evolution and about selection at levels above that of the gene. He is particularly skeptical about the practical possibility or importance of group selection as a basis for understanding altruism. This behavior appears at first to be an evolutionary paradox, since helping others costs precious resources and decreases one's own fitness. Previously, many had interpreted this as an aspect of group selection. Individuals are doing what is best for the survival of the population or species as a whole. British evolutionary biologist W. D. Hamilton had used the gene-centered view to explain altruism in terms of inclusive fitness and kin selection, that individuals behave altruistically toward their close relatives, who share many of their own genes. Similarly, Robert Trivers, thinking in terms of the gene-centered model, developed the theory of reciprocal altruism, whereby one organism provides a benefit to another in the expectation of future reciprocation. Dawkins popularized these ideas in The Selfish Gene, and developed them in his own work. He has also been strongly critical of the Gaia hypothesis of the independent scientist James Lovelock. In June 2012, Dawkins was highly critical of fellow biologist E.O. Wilson's 2012 book The Social Conquest of Earth. Critics of Dawkins's approach suggest that taking the gene as the unit of selection is misleading. The gene could be better described, they say, as a unit of evolution. In The Selfish Gene, Dawkins explains that he is using George C. Williams's definition of the gene as that which segregates and recombines with appreciable frequency. Another common objection is that a gene cannot survive alone, but must cooperate with other genes to build an individual, and therefore a gene cannot be an independent unit. In The Extended Phenotype, Dawkins suggests that from an individual gene's viewpoint, all other genes are part of the environment to which it is adapted. Advocates for higher levels of selection suggest that there are many phenomena that gene-based selection cannot satisfactorily explain. The philosopher Mary Midgley, with whom Dawkins clashed in print concerning The Selfish Gene, has criticized gene selection, memetics, and sociobiology as being excessively reductionist. She has suggested that the popularity of Dawkins's work is due to factors in the zeitgeist such as the increased individualism of the Thatcher-Reagan decades. In a set of controversies over the mechanisms and interpretation of evolution, one faction is often named after Dawkins, while the other faction is named after the American paleontologist Stephen Jay Gould, reflecting the preeminence of each as a popularizer of the pertinent ideas. In particular, Dawkins and Gould have been prominent commentators in the controversy over sociobiology and evolutionary psychology, with Dawkins generally approving and Gould generally being critical. A typical example of Dawkins's position is his scathing review of Not in Our Genes by Stephen Rose, Leon J. Kamen, and Richard C. Lewontin. Two other thinkers who are often considered to be allied with Dawkins on the subject are Steven Pinker and Daniel Dennett. Dennett has promoted a gene-centered view of evolution and defended reductionism in biology. Despite their academic disagreements, Dawkins and Gould did not have a hostile personal relationship, and Dawkins dedicated a large portion of his 2003 book A Devil's Chaplain posthumously to Gould, who had died the previous year. Dawkins's book The Greatest Show on Earth, The Evidence for Evolution expounds the evidence for biological evolution, and coincided with Darwin's bicentennial year. Mem. Dawkins coined the word mem as a way to encourage readers to think about how Darwinian principles might be extended beyond the realm of genes. Indeed, it was intended as an extension of his replicators' argument, but it took on a life of its own in the hands of other authors such as Daniel Dennett and Susan Blackmore. These popularizations then led to the emergence of memetics, a field from which Dawkins has distanced himself. Dawkins's mem refers to any cultural entity that an observer might consider a replicator of a certain idea or complex of ideas. He hypothesized that people could view many cultural entities as capable of such replication, generally through exposure to humans, who have evolved as efficient copiers of information and behavior. Because mems are not always copied perfectly, they might become refined, combined, or otherwise modified with other ideas. This results in new mems, which may themselves prove more or less efficient replicators than their predecessors, thus providing a framework for a hypothesis of cultural evolution based on mems, a notion that is analogous to the theory of biological evolution based on genes. Although Dawkins invented the specific term mem independently, he has not claimed that the idea itself was entirely novel, and there have been other expressions for similar ideas in the past. For instance, John Laron has suggested that the term may have derived from the work of the little-known German biologist Richard Semon. In 1904, Semon published Imneme. This book discusses the cultural transmission of experiences, with insights parallel to those of Dawkins. Laron also found the term meme used in Maurice Moriteling's The Life of the White Ant, and has highlighted the similarities to Dawkins's concept. Author James Gleick describes Dawkins's concept of the mem as his most famous memorable invention, far more influential than his selfish genes or his later proselytizing against religiosity. Criticism of creationism. Dawkins is a prominent critic of creationism. He has described the young Earth creationist view that the Earth is only a few thousand years old as a preposterous, mind-shrinking falsehood, and his 1986 book, The Blind Watchmaker, contains a sustained critique of the argument from design, an important creationist argument. In the book, Dawkins argues against the watchmaker analogy made famous by the 18th-century English theologian William Paley via his book Natural Theology, in which Paley argues that just as a watch is too complicated and too functional to have sprung into existence merely by accident, so too must all living things with their far greater complexity be purposefully designed. Dawkins shares the view generally held by scientists that natural selection is sufficient to explain the apparent functionality and non-random complexity of the biological world, and can be said to play the role of watchmaker in nature, albeit as an automatic, non-intelligent, blind watchmaker. In 1986, Dawkins and biologist John Maynard Smith participated in an Oxford Union debate against A. E. Wilder Smith and Edgar Andrews. In general, however, Dawkins has followed the advice of his late colleague Stephen Jay Gould and refused to participate in formal debates with creationists because, what they seek is the oxygen of respectability, and doing so would give them this oxygen by the mere act of engaging with them at all. He suggests that creationists don't mind being beaten in an argument. What matters is that we give them recognition by bothering to argue with them in public. In a December 2004 interview with American journalist Bill Moyers, Dawkins said that among the things that science does know, evolution is about as certain as anything we know. When Moyers questioned him on the use of the word theory, Dawkins stated that evolution has been observed. It's just that it hasn't been observed while it's happening. He added that it is rather like a detective coming on a murder after the scene. The detective hasn't actually seen the murder take place, of course. But what you do see is a massive clue. Huge quantities of circumstantial evidence. It might as well be spelled out in words of English. Dawkins has ardently opposed the inclusion of intelligent design in science education, describing it as not a scientific argument at all, but a religious one. He has been referred to in the media as Darwin's Rottweiler, a reference to English biologist T.H. Huxley, who was known as Darwin's Bulldog for his advocacy of Charles Darwin's evolutionary ideas. He has been a strong critic of the British organisation Truth and Science, which promotes the teaching of creationism in state schools, and he plans through the Richard Dawkins Foundation for Reason and Science to subsidise schools with the delivery of books, DVDs, and pamphlets that counteract their work, which Dawkins has described as an educational scandal. Advocacy of Atheism. Dawkins is an outspoken atheist and a supporter of various atheist, secular, and humanistic organisations. Although he was confirmed into the Church of England at the age of 13, he started to lose his religious faith when he discovered Darwin. He revealed that his understanding of evolution led him to atheism and is puzzled by belief in God among individuals who are sophisticated in science. He disagrees with Stephen Jay Gould's principle of non-overlapping magisteria and considers the existence of God to be a scientific hypothesis like any other. Dawkins became a prominent critic of religion and has stated his opposition to religion is twofold: religion is both a source of conflict and a justification for belief without evidence. He considers faith a belief that is not based on evidence as one of the world's great evils. He rose to prominence in public debates relating science and religion since the publication of his book The God Delusion in 2006, which became an international bestseller. Its success has been seen by many as indicative of a change in the contemporary cultural zeitgeist and has also been identified with the rise of new atheism. Dawkins sees education and consciousness raising as the primary tools in opposing what he considers to be religious dogma and indoctrination. These tools include the fight against certain stereotypes, and he has adopted the term bright as a way of associating positive public connotations with those who possess a naturalistic worldview. He has given support to the idea of a free-thinking school, which would not indoctrinate children in atheism or in any religion but would instead teach children to be critical and open-minded. Inspired by the consciousness-raising successes of feminists in arousing widespread embarrassment at the routine use of he instead of she, Dawkins similarly suggests that phrases such as Catholic child and Muslim child should be considered as socially absurd as, for instance, Marxist child, as he believes that children should not be classified based on their parents' ideological or religious beliefs. Dawkins suggests that atheists should be proud, not apologetic, stressing that atheism is evidence of a healthy, independent mind. He hopes that the more atheists identify themselves, the more the public will become aware of just how many people actually hold these views, thereby reducing the negative opinion of atheism among the religious majority. Inspired by the gay rights movement, he founded the OUT campaign to encourage atheists worldwide to declare their stance publicly and proudly. He supported the UK's first atheist advertising initiative, the Atheist Bus campaign in 2008, which aimed to raise funds to place atheist advertisements on buses in the London area. Dawkins's advocacy of atheism has been controversial. Writer Christopher Hitchens defended the perceived stridency of Dawkins's stance towards religion while Nobel laureates Sir Harold Kroto and James D. Watson and psychologist Steven Pinker lavished praise on his book The God Delusion. In contrast, literary critic Terry Eagleton, theologian Alistair McGrath, and science philosopher Michael Rose have accused Dawkins of having fundamentally misapprehended the theological arguments he claimed to refute, while scientists Martin Rees and Peter Higgs have criticized Dawkins's confrontational stance towards religion as unhelpful, with Higgs going as far as to label him a fundamentalist. In response to his critics, Dawkins maintains that theologians are no better than scientists in addressing deep cosmological questions and that he himself is not a fundamentalist as he is willing to change his mind in the face of new evidence. Recently, in May 2014, at the Hay Festival in Wales, Dawkins was quoted as saying, "I would describe myself as a secular Christian in the same sense as secular Jews have a feeling for nostalgia and ceremonies." Foundation. In 2006, Dawkins founded the Richard Dawkins Foundation for Reason and Science, a non-profit organization. The foundation is in a developmental phase. It has been granted charitable status in the United Kingdom and the United States. DFRS plans to finance research on the psychology of belief and religion, finance scientific education programs and materials, and publicize and support charitable organizations that are secular in nature. The foundation also offers humanist, rationalist, and scientific materials through its website. Dawkins has said the trend toward theocratic thinking in the United States is a danger not only for America but for the entire world. Connected to this concern, Dawkins invited Sean Faircloth to serve as opening speaker on Dawkins's 2011 U.S. book tour. Faircloth is author of the book Attack of the Theocrats: How the Religious Right Harms Us All and What We Can Do About It. The Richard Dawkins Foundation later hired Faircloth, who has 10 years' experience as a state legislator, as Director of Strategy and Policy. Other fields. In his role as Professor for Public Understanding of Science, Dawkins has been a critic of pseudoscience and alternative medicine. His 1998 book Unweaving the Rainbow considers John Keats's accusation that by explaining the rainbow, Isaac Newton diminished its beauty. Dawkins argues for the opposite conclusion. He suggests that deep space, the billions of years of life's evolution, and the microscopic workings of biology and heredity contain more beauty and wonder than do myths and pseudoscience. For John Diamond's posthumously published Snake Oil, a book devoted to debunking alternative medicine, Dawkins wrote a foreword in which he asserts that alternative medicine is harmful, if only because it distracts patients from more successful conventional treatments and gives people false hopes. Dawkins states that there is no alternative medicine. There is only medicine that works and medicine that doesn't work. Dawkins has expressed concern about the growth of the planet's human population and about the matter of overpopulation. In The Selfish Gene, he briefly mentions population growth, giving the example of Latin America, whose population, at the time the book was written, was doubling every 40 years. He is critical of Roman Catholic attitudes to family planning and population control, stating that leaders who forbid contraception and express a preference for natural methods of population limitation will get just such a method in the form of starvation. As a supporter of the Great Ape Project a movement to extend certain moral and legal rights to all Great Apes Dawkins contributed the article Gaps in the Mind to the Great Ape Project book edited by Paolo Cavalieri and Peter Singer. In this essay, he criticizes contemporary society's moral attitudes as being based on a discontinuous, speciesist imperative. Dawkins also regularly comments in newspapers and weblogs on contemporary political questions. His opinions include opposition to the 2003 invasion of Iraq, the British nuclear deterrent, the actions of U.S. President George W. Bush and the ethics of designer babies. Several such articles were included in A Devil's Chaplain, an anthology of writings about science, religion, and politics. He is also a supporter of the Republic's campaign to replace the British monarchy with a democratically elected president. Dawkins has described himself as a Labour voter in the 1970s and voter for the Liberal Democrats since the party's creation. In 2009, he spoke at the party's conference in opposition to blasphemy laws, alternative medicine, and faith schools. In the UK general election of 2010, Dawkins officially endorsed the Liberal Democrats, in support of their campaign for electoral reform and for their refusal to pander to faith. In the 2007 TV documentary The Enemies of Reason, Dawkins discusses what he sees as the dangers of abandoning critical thought and rationale based upon scientific evidence. He specifically cites astrology, spiritualism, dowsing, alternative faiths, alternative medicine, and homeopathy. He also discusses how the Internet can be used to spread religious hatred and conspiracy theories with scant attention to evidence-based reasoning. Continuing a long-standing partnership with Channel 4, Dawkins participated in a 5-part television series Genius of Britain, along with fellow scientists Stephen Hawking, James Dyson, Paul Nurse, and Jim Al-Khalili. The 5-episode series was broadcast in June 2010. The series focuses on major British scientific achievements throughout history. In a more full documentary entitled Faith School Menace, and presented by Dawkins, he argues for us to reconsider the consequences of faith education, which bamboozles parents, and indoctrinates and divides children. In 1998, Dawkins expressed his appreciation for 2 books connected with the Sokal affair, Higher Superstition, The Academic Left and Its Quarrels with Science by Gross and Levitt. Intellectual Impostures by Sokal and Brickmont. These books are famous for their criticism of postmodernism in U.S. universities. In the same occasion, Dawkins also criticized Cambridge University for awarding philosopher Jacques Derrida an honorary doctorate. In 2011, Dawkins joined the Professoriate of the New College of the Humanities, a new private university in London established by A.C. Grayling, which opened in September 2012. Awards and recognition. Dawkins was awarded a Doctor of Science by the University of Oxford in 1989. He holds honorary doctorates in science from the University of Huddersfield, University of Westminster, Durham University, the University of Hull, the University of Antwerp, and the University of Oslo, and honorary doctorates from the University of Aberdeen, Open University, the Vrije Brussels, and the University of Valencia. He also holds honorary doctorates of letters from the University of St Andrews and the Australian National University, and was elected Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature in 1997 and the Royal Society in 2001. He is one of the patrons of the Oxford University Scientific Society. In 1987, Dawkins received a Royal Society of Literature Award and a Los Angeles Times Literary Prize for his book The Blind Watchmaker. In the same year, he received a Sci-Tech Prize for Best Television Documentary Science Programme of the Year for his work on the BBC's Horizon episode The Blind Watchmaker. His other awards include the Zoological Society of London's Silver Medal, the Finlay Innovation Award, the Michael Faraday Award, the Nakayama Prize, the American Humanist Association's Humanist of the Year Award, the 5th International Cosmos Prize, the Kissler Prize, the Medal of the Presidency of the Italian Republic, the 2001 and 2012 Emperor Has Number Clothes Award from the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the Bicentennial Kelvin Medal of the Royal Philosophical Society of Glasgow, and the Nirenberg Prize for Science in the Public Interest. Dawkins topped Prospect magazine's 2004 list of the top 100 public British intellectuals, as decided by the readers, receiving twice as many votes as the runner-up. He was shortlisted as a candidate in their 2008 follow-up poll. In 2005, the Hamburg-based Alfred Schroepfer Foundation awarded him its Shakespeare Prize in recognition of his concise and accessible presentation of scientific knowledge. He won the Lewis Thomas Prize for writing about science for 2006, as well as the Galaxy British Book Awards' as Author of the Year Award for 2007. In the same year, he was listed by Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in the world in 2007, and he was ranked 20th in the Daily Telegraph's 2007 list of 100 greatest living geniuses. He was awarded the Dieschner Award, named after German anti-clerical author Karl-Heinz Dieschner. Since 2003, the Atheist Alliance International has awarded a prize during its annual conference, honoring an outstanding atheist whose work has done the most to raise public awareness of atheism during that year. It is known as the Richard Dawkins Award, in honor of Dawkins's own efforts. In February 2010, Dawkins was named to the Freedom from Religion Foundation's Honorary Board of Distinguished Achievers. In 2012, Ichthyologists in Sri Lanka honored Dawkins by creating Dawkinsia as a new genus name. Explaining the reasoning behind the genus name, lead researcher Rowan Payagoda was quoted as stating that Richard Dawkins has, through his writings, helped us understand that the universe is far more beautiful and awe-inspiring than any religion has imagined. We hope that Dawkinsia will serve as a reminder of the elegance and simplicity of evolution, the only rational explanation there is for the unimaginable diversity of life on Earth. In a poll held by Prospect magazine in 2013, Dawkins was voted the world's top thinker based on 65 names chosen by a largely US and UK-based expert panel. Media, selected publications. Richard Dawkins. The Selfish Gene. Oxford, Oxford University Press. ISBN A0-19-286092-5. Richard Dawkins. The Extended Phenotype. Oxford, Oxford University Press. ISBN A0-19-288051-9. Richard Dawkins. The Blind Watchmaker. New York, W. W. Norton and Company. ISBN A0-393-31570-3. Richard Dawkins. River Out of Eden. New York, Basic Books. ISBN A0-465-06990-8. Richard Dawkins. Climbing Mount Improbable. New York, W. W. Norton and Company. ISBN A0-393-31682-3. Richard Dawkins. Unweaving the Rainbow. Boston, Houghton Mifflin. ISBN A0-618-05673-4. Richard Dawkins. The Devil's Chaplain. Boston, Houghton Mifflin. ISBN A0-618-33540-4. Richard Dawkins. The Ancestor's Tale. Boston, Houghton Mifflin. ISBN A0-618-00583-8. Richard Dawkins. The God Delusion. Boston, Houghton Mifflin. ISBN A0-618-68000-4. Richard Dawkins. The Greatest Show on Earth, The Evidence for Evolution. Free Press, Transworld. ISBN A0-593-06173-. Richard Dawkins. The Magic of Reality, How We Know What's Really True. Free Press, Bantam Press. ISBN A978-1-4391-9281-8. OCLCA 709673132. Richard Dawkins. An Appetite for Wonder, The Making of a Scientist. Echo Press. ISBN A978-0-06-228715-1. Documentary films, Me Skies Finish First, The Blind Watchmaker, Growing Up in the Universe, Break the Science Barrier, The Big Question, Part 3 of the TV series, titled, Why Are We Here? The Root of All Evil? The Enemies of Reason, The Genius of Charles Darwin, Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed as Himself, The Purpose of Purpose lecture tour among American universities, Faith School Menace? Beautiful Minds BBC 4 documentary, Sex, Death and the Meaning of Life, The Unbelievers, Other Appearances, Doctor Who, The Stolen Earth as Himself, The Simpsons, Black-Eyed Peas appears in Ned Flanders' Dream of Hell. Provided voice as a demon version of himself, notes. References. External links, General, Official website, The Richard Dawkins Foundation for Reason and Science, Richard Dawkins at the Internet Movie Database, works by or about Richard Dawkins in libraries, Richard Dawkins collected news and commentary at The Guardian, Richard Dawkins collected news and commentary at The New York Times, collection of Richard Dawkins quotes, video, National Geographic interviews and a series of video interviews with National Geographic Channel with Richard Dawkins on Darwin, Evolution and God. Appearances on C-SPAN, Richard Dawkins at TED, video interview with Riz Khan for Al Jazeera English, video interview at Big Think, An Appetite for Wonder, Richard Dawkins in conversation at the Royal Institution, selected writings, Viruses of the Mind, Religion as a Mental Virus. The Real Romance in the Stars, a critical view of astrology. The Emptiness of Theology at ADFRS. 1998, a critical view of theology. Snake Oil and Holy Water, suggests that there is no convergence occurring between science and theism. What use is religion? a suggests that religion may have no survival value other than to itself. Race and Creation, on race, its usage and a theory of how it evolved. The Giant Tortoise's Tale, The Turtle's Tale and the Lava Lizard's Tale, a series of 3 articles written after a visit to the Galapagos Islands. Dawkins's Huffington Post articles, audio, Richard Dawkins on Radio Live's Weekend Variety Wireless, Richard Dawkins appears live on New Zealand's Radio Live, taking calls from the audience.